Hosea 8, verse 5. Thy calf, O Samaria, hath cast thee off. Mine anger is kindled against them. How long will it be ere they attain to innocency? That's a good question. How long do you get innocent? When you lose your innocence, can you regain it? Seems like an odd question. Well, we'll cover it. First thing he says there is about the calf of Samaria. Now we know what that calf is. That's the false worship that the northern kingdoms instituted to keep them from going to Jerusalem. And that was wicked from the beginning. God hates idols. They knew that. That's a basic of being an Israelite. You worship God alone. And of course you'll find it in 1 Kings 12. I'm not going to read the passage, but that's where they institute 2 golden calves. And in Isaiah 31, Isaiah 31 verse 1, it appears that this lucky charm they had, a golden calf, they attributed to some sort of help for a while. And then at some point either they woke up or the devil thought he had them trapped and he no longer would help them. The devil will do that. If you'll do his bidding for a while, he'll make you think that it was the best choice you ever made. And then pretty soon when you're stuck and you're hooked, then he quits. He reveals himself for who he is. Isaiah 31 verse 1. Woe to them that go down to Egypt for help, and stay on horses, and trust in chariots, because they are many, and in horsemen, because they are very strong. But they look not unto the Holy One of Israel, neither seek the Lord. We think that's a wimpy way to do battle, because we've got such great machines now, you know. However, back in the day, we're using bows and arrows and spears and swords. A horse would be a good idea. A chariot would be a nice addition to your army. And he's saying there's something way more powerful than a chariot. The best you can do with military machinery is God. And he said they didn't look to me, and I could have helped them. Look at 1 Samuel 4. 1 Samuel 4 verse 3. We tend to do this. I know I'm chewing out Israel as though they're a bunch of bad guys and we're just like them. We tend to, it's easy for the human mind to fixate on objects rather than God. And when God uses something, we suddenly start switching our devotion to the thing he used instead of God. 1 Samuel 4 verse 3. And when the people were come into the camp, the elders of Israel said, Wherefore hath the Lord smitten us today before the Philistines? Now he gets the blame. Let us fetch the ark of the covenant of the Lord. The Lord wasn't enough. We need the ark. Huh? That doesn't even make sense. Out of Shiloh unto us, that when it cometh among us, it, not he, it, may save us out of the hand of our enemies. And it is no substitute for him. I'd rather have him any day. The first golden calf showed up in Exodus 32. You know, that's fresh Egyptian worship right in the midst of Moses getting the 10 Commandments. What a timing for that thing. The devil likes to strike and strike fast. It seems like the counterfeit always comes before the real. And there's a verse in the New Testament where Jesus says you have need of patience. And I think that thing is applicable to just about every single day. The older I get, the more of it I need that verse. Because I sure ain't got none. Life starts showing you that, yeah, you do need some patience, buddy. The worship described there in 2 Kings 17 with the Baal worshipers. You remember they go up there and they're going to, all that rigmarole they're doing, all that work, it's human effort. Oh, Baal, hear us, and building the altars and doing all their dances, and you know, that's man. Man wants to work himself to death When really it's as simple as this: call to God. Elijah didn't have to go through any big rigmarole. He just prayed to God. God did it. But it's so easy to default to, well, I can do this, and I can handle it. Look at Hosea 13. He said in our verse that mine anger is kindled against them. You don't want to get God mad.
Amen.
We covered God's anger this morning with Sodom and Gomorrah. When he gets mad, something gets broke. Hosea 13, verse 2. And now they sin more and more, and have made them molten images of their silver, and idols according to their own understanding. All of it the work of the craftsman. They say of them, let the men that sacrifice kiss the calves. That seems weird to me. I've never been into any of that pagan stuff. I was never a Catholic, so I don't understand it, I guess. But the Catholics like to do that. They have the little idols, and you're supposed to kiss them. I was never in the mafia. You got to go kiss the mafia don's ring. And that doesn't seem sanitary to me. I'm not that scared of germs, but hey, we don't have to push it, do we? Even the Catholic Church passing the same chalice to everybody to drink out of? Wow, it makes no sense. It's just that's where you lose your mind if you're not following God. Deuteronomy 32. Deuteronomy 32:22. God's anger is usually connected to, in its extreme, to fire. Deuteronomy 32:22. For a fire is kindled in mine anger, and shall burn unto the lowest hell, and shall consume the earth with her increase, and set on fire the foundations of the mountains. That's what happens when God gets mad. And that's what we saw this morning in Sodom and Gomorrah. He lit that place on fire. He said, I'm going to leave it around so people can look at it and see. That Dead Sea is so we can see what God does when he gets mad. 2 Kings 17. 2 Kings 17, verse 16. We're going to read just the first line of it and predict how this is going to end. And they left all the commandments of the Lord their God. That's not going to end well. Remember the whole duty of man? Fear God, obey his commandments. Okay, they just said we're not doing our duties. And made them molten images. That's to make him mad. Even 2 calves. And made a grove and worshipped all the host of heaven and served Baal. Now, this worshiping the host of heaven is, I think there's something to that. That's some spooky stuff the devil orchestrates. And I think that he appears to give some answers in that mess. That's that astrology. And we're going to see, I think that there was something to these golden calves that the devil had, I'm going to use the phrase, a Shekinah glory. That is a pagan phrase. It's not in your Bible. If anybody starts talking about Shekinah, there's no such thing in the Bible. If you look it up, it's Kabbalah that comes from the Jews, a corrupt version of Judaism. And they say there's a male and a female deity, and it's just pagan worship is all it is. But there is something to it, and the devil shows up in that. And he appears as an angel of light. That's what the Bible tells us. And I think that these things, these golden calves, had some kind of aura about them. We'll find in our verse in a minute, I'm trying not to get ahead of myself, that its glory has disappeared off of this image. And so I think there was something there that they attributed, something supernatural to. Verse 17, and they caused their sons and their daughters to pass through the fire, and used divination and enchantments, and sold themselves to do evil in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him to anger. Therefore the Lord was not just angry, very angry with Israel, and removed them out of his sight. There was none left but the tribe of Judah only. He got mad. Look down at verse 21. Yes, 21.
Okay, so that phrase, remove them out of his sight. All right, so he didn't wipe out the other 11 tribes, correct?
Remove them out of his sight. That's a good question. For Israel was said to be the apple of his eye. So if they're no longer the apple of his eye, they're not his focus. So he says, I'm putting you in time out, and I'm going to pay attention to somebody who'll listen to me. Judah, for a while, did follow God after the northern tribes went away, went to Assyria. But then it wasn't long until they decided they wanted to be stupid too. And they followed suit. So Nebuchadnezzar comes in. Verse 21. For he rent Israel from the house of David, and they made Jeroboam the son of Nebat king. And Jeroboam drave Israel from following the Lord and made them sin a great sin. Now, you cannot control what people do. I mean, you can make laws, but when has laws ever fixed anything? That's the thing that really gets me. Anytime there's a shooting, people get all up and worried about, we need to make new regulations. Hello, it's illegal to shoot somebody. Do you think another law would make them say, oh, I better obey the law? Murder's wrong from the beginning. They're a law breaker. Why would having a new rule mean they would obey it? They'll go find a way to get a gun. And go to Australia. They can't have guns over there. You know what they do? They kill each other with knives and machetes. And they do it. I saw a thing. You can get killed faster with a machete than you can with a gun. It's dangerous, and you can't see it coming. There's no way around man being wicked other than God. And until they put him in, there ain't no help. Verse 22. For the children of Israel walked in all the sins of Jeroboam, which he did. They departed not from them. Isn't that something? We got a commitment to wickedness that we can't have for God. That's just our age. Now, there's a good thing about that. I'm going to give you the positive. Get a little Joel Osteen up in here. The positive is this. When you do it anyway, you're going to get a reward for it. Because in the millennium, it will be the natural thing to do. Well, there's no reward for that. But right now, if you'll do the hard thing and follow him and commit yourself to him, you get rewarded for it, even though it's your duty. Verse 23. Until the Lord removed Israel out of his sight, as he had said by all his servants the prophets. So was Israel carried away out of their own land to Assyria unto this day, the day of the writing. He asked our question, how long will it be ere they attain to innocency? You wouldn't think that you can go backwards. You can't take someone who's no longer innocent and turn them into something innocent. Let's just take the simple example of the word. The opposite of innocent is guilty. How long is it going to take me to go from guilty to innocent? No. Now with God it is possible. And this is great because he's talking about way down the line. There's coming a day when Israel will suddenly be innocent again. But it's going to take a while. And he's looking for that day. I'm going to show you a bunch of things here. Ezekiel Chapter 4. Let's find out how long it's going to be because he asked the question. So we like hard questions. Ezekiel 4, verse 5. I'm going to give you a bunch of answers that aren't the answer, and then I'll give you the answer. Ezekiel 4, verse 5. For I have laid upon thee the years of their iniquity, according to the number of the days, 390 days. So shalt thou bear the iniquity of the house of Israel. When thou hast accomplished them, lie again on thy right side, and thou shalt bear the iniquity of the house of Judah, 40 days. I have appointed thee each day for a year. Okay, what this is talking about, and different people have different explanations of it, but I'm going to tell you the right one. You study it out, but I believe what he's saying here. This is the number of years that each kingdom, the north and the south, are in tribute to a heathen country. And that's what you find. It does not mean that after he's doing it, some of their tribute had already begun. It didn't say that once certain date strikes, then they'll go into this 40 days or whatever. No, I think that they were already in tribute. He's saying this is how long it's going to last. So that's one numbering system. Well, nobody in there said we're going to get innocency after that. But that was a numbering system that was given. However, there's no innocence connected to it. Daniel chapter 9. Daniel 9 verse 2. Daniel is another book that you want to study, but especially this chapter 9, because there's two numbering systems in chapter 9. Here's the first one, verse 2. In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by books the number of years, whereof the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah, to the prophet, came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolations of Jerusalem. Okay, this is the number of years of captivity in Babylon. They're going to be in Babylon for 70 years. Nobody says anything about getting innocence after that. There's one more numbering system, and this one's going to give us innocency. Daniel 9, look at verse 24. Daniel 9:24. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon the holy city to finish the transgression. That's over. To make an end of sins. Here's the good one. To make reconciliation for iniquity. Now we're even. And to bring in everlasting righteousness. Now we think of that being God coming back. And that is true. He will come back. And his kingdom will be a kingdom of everlasting righteousness. However, we're going to find out he's referring to Israel itself. They're going to be his representative to the world of righteousness. And to seal up the vision and prophecy and to anoint the most holy. This attaining innocence is connected with the new covenant. I can't give you all the verses on it. I've done it before, I think. But I'll give you a handful of the verses on it to see, you can see how it's connected with innocence. Deuteronomy 30, verse 6. Deuteronomy 30, verse 6. It says, the Lord thy God will circumcise thine heart and the heart of thy seed, to love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul, that thou mayest live. Okay, one day God's going to circumcise their heart. Didn't happen in the Old Testament. It's not happening right now. It will happen in the millennium. Isaiah 54. Isaiah 54, verse 13. This is a great picture of innocence here if you ever saw one. Isaiah 54, 13. And all thy children shall be taught of the Lord, and great shall be the peace of thy children. There's innocence and everlasting righteousness. Get it in Jeremiah 31. I'm probably moving faster than... Jeremiah 31, verse 33. But this shall be the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, saith the Lord, I will put my law in their inward parts, and write it in their hearts, and I will be their God, and they shall be my people. That's a return to innocence right there. He said they didn't follow the law. That was the agreement. They broke it. But now I'm going to do something so it returns innocence. It's inside of them. Kind of what we have now, but we don't live by it either. Verse 34. And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor, and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord. For they shall all know me, from the least of them unto the greatest of them, saith the Lord. For I will forgive their iniquities, and I will remember their sins no more. Innocence. It's been returned or restored. Only God can do that. Joel chapter 3. Joel 3, verse 20. But Judah shall dwell forever, and Jerusalem from generation to generation. For I will cleanse their blood that I have not cleansed. For the Lord dwelleth in Zion. I'm going to do something during that new covenant period that has never been done before. I'm going to cleanse their blood. Now notice that's different than what we have. We have his blood. Now you know that's clean. But here, the Jews that are getting salvation through a different system, he says, I'm going to clean them up from the inside out. And I'm not giving them the blood of the Lamb. I'm cleansing the blood they do have. Little difference. Hebrews 1 verse 14. Hebrews 1:14. There was one more I should have gave you. Hebrews 1:14. This is speaking of angels here. He says, Are they not all ministering spirits sent forth to minister for them who shall be heirs of salvation? We don't inherit salvation, but a Jew in the millennium will inherit it. It passes down through his seed. He talked about his children's children. David does. He's got an assurance that they'll serve God. Well, Solomon didn't. So how'd that get fulfilled? Well, it's going to be fulfilled in the millennium. One other passage, Romans chapter 11. This is part of the new covenant. Romans 11, I'm going to start back at verse 25, which is a little farther than we need to go, but we'll get it all in context. For I would not, brethren, that you should be ignorant of this mystery, lest you should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part has happened to Israel. That's right now. They're blind. They don't understand salvation. They didn't accept the Messiah when they had the opportunity to. He says they're going to remain blind here until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in. What's the fullness of the Gentiles? That's the time of the Gentiles. The Gentiles are still ruling in the tribulation, persecuting the Jews. So that time does not end until the end of the tribulation. Then something happens. Verse 26. And so all Israel shall be saved. Innocence returned. God just grants it to them. As it is written, there shall come out of Zion the deliverer, and shall turn away ungodliness from Jacob. Matches with Daniel. Okay, so that's the new covenant. That's innocence restored. That's a great promise right there in the middle of it, and you wouldn't notice it unless you just start studying. He says, how long till innocence returns? Well, it's going to be from the date he's writing there about 3,000 years. Oof, long time. Hosea 8, verse 6. Hosea 8:6. For from Israel was it also, the workman made it, therefore it is not God. But here's what it is. The calf of Samaria shall be broken in pieces. God is mad at this image they've made. And it's like he doesn't even want to mention the name of it. It. All through the Bible, you know that imagery is one of those things that gets God mad on purpose. The other thing is sodomy. He destroyed 5 cities for it and left it here for everybody to see. Not all sins are the same. All sins are wicked. Not all sins are the same. Hosea 10 verse 5. Hosea 10 verse 5. The inhabitants of Samaria shall fear because of the calves of Bethaven, for the people thereof shall mourn over it, and the priests thereof shall rejoice on it. Now look at this. For the glory thereof, because it is departed from it. There was some glory connected with this calf. And I think it was a supernatural, satanic Shekinah glory that came down and dwelled on these calves, an imitation of what happened in the Holy of Holies. And the devil did that trick for them until they got to the point where God was mad at them. Then he said, that's all I wanted out of it. I'm done. I'm not helping you anymore. He wants to cheer on anything that's going to fall apart. What a friend. Hosea 13:2. Oh, we've already covered this one. Now they sin more and more. They have made molten images of their silver and idols according to their own understanding. That's the problem. Man doesn't have that great of understanding. The older you get, the more you realize there's so much more you need to know. At least for me, anyway. When you're young, you think you know it all. Well, you do. You know all that you need to know at that point. But the older you get, the more things you see and the more subjects you get interested in, and the more you realize, hey, I really don't know nothing. He said they did this according to their understanding. How much more understanding does God have? Okay. So we just need to follow his understanding and try to obey that rather than make him come down to our lack of understanding. All of it the work of the craftsmen. They say of them, let the men sacrifice, kiss the calves. That's that kissing thing. 2 Chronicles 11. Second Chronicles 11, verse 15. This is one of those verses, if you don't slow down, you don't realize what's in here, but it's shocking when you read it. 2 Chronicles 11:15. And he ordained him priest for the high places. This is a phony worship here. It's to keep them from going down to Jerusalem. And for the, what's that word? Devils. It's satanic. And for the calves which he had made. He was not ignorant of what was going on. He knew this was not of God, it was of the devil. Wow. And you find places in there where somebody willingly offers themselves to the devil. It says of Ahab that he sold himself to work wickedness. Or something like that. I'll probably get a demerit on that one, Chris. 1 Chronicles 13. 1 Chronicles 13, verse 8. Now ye think to withstand the kingdom of the Lord in the hand of the sons of David, and ye be a great multitude, and there are with you golden calves, which Jeroboam made you for gods. Now, it sounded like they were powerful for a little while. 2 Chronicles 13:8. There's no telling what I said. Oh, okay, yeah.
We wouldn't check it. It's not there.
Y'all can keep me honest. He says there that they have multitudes, but he threw one little nugget in there. What you've got with you is golden calves that Jeroboam made for God's little g. Well, you know that's going to fail. If one side trusts in the Lord God, whose name is the Almighty, that means there's no might bigger than him. Nothing can stand up against that. And you've got a phony thing that there he's already declared, those phony things make me mad. I would hate to see God going into battle. I mean, you're already going into battle. That's a bad thing. But then somebody provoking him. That's a combination for destruction. Acts 19. Acts 19, verse 27. It says, so that not only this our craft is in danger to be set at naught, but also that the temple of the great goddess Diana should be despised, and her magnificence should be destroyed, whom all Asia and the world worshipeth. Now, study history, you'll find it. That's true, they did worship it. The Oracle of Delphi, all of those pagan things, those were things the devil used. They say the Oracle of Delphi is actually sulfur that comes up through the ground. And what happens is these people go into this room where it's venting, and they're getting high. Well, you know what? It doesn't just stop there. They start seeing visions, and the devil gets in there and uses that mess. It was, I'm trying to think of his name. Who was the Caesar that was in when Paul was around? That was
Nero?
Nero. When Nero was toward the end of his life, well, he didn't know it was the end of his, I think he was 40 years old. He sent to the Oracle of Delphi because things were getting rough. And he said, there's a uprising. Should I worry about this uprising? How long do I have to live? And the oracle said, beware the age 73, I think is what he said. And so he thought, oh, that's great. I got till 73. I'm good. That's the thing. The oracle was always mystical and didn't give a clear-cut answer. So he was thinking it was about him, 73. Well, there was a man in Spain who decided he wanted the throne. And he got an army together, and they came over and got it, and his age was 73. There's something to all that mess. The devil's behind it. And I don't doubt he gives some answers that are right, inspired by satanic means, and that's all that stuff. Here, this temple of Diana, he says her magnificence. Now, we think of that as being grandeur and that type of thing, but it may be the same type thing that's going on with those calves. Some Shekinah glory thing showing up. The devil impersonating as though there's something spiritual, heavenly going on, and it's not. Look at Exodus 18. Exodus 18:10. And Jethro said, this is Moses' father-in-law. And Jethro said, blessed be the Lord, who hath delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of Pharaoh, who hath delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods. That's good. And he's not even an Israelite. He's a pagan man himself. But he says, it doesn't take much to figure this thing out. God's greater than all these phonies. For in the thing wherein they dealt proudly, he was above them. That's God. Whatever man can imagine, God's much greater. So there's no need to imagine something, invent it. Too much work. God's already done it. He's way above that. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took a burnt offering and sacrifices for God. And Aaron came and all the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law before God. Now that was a great witness. And I'm going to say, I don't see anywhere that Moses is witnessing to him. God did the witnessing. Now Moses does try to convince him to stay with them and to help him. That doesn't sound like a good idea either. A pagan, even if he did just become a proselyte, he just became a proselyte. And you wouldn't put a novice in an office of that high position. So it's a good thing that he didn't stick around, I think. But that's a witness that came to him from God, not from Moses. Hosea 8, look at verse 7. Hosea 8:7. He says, for they have sown the wind, and they shall reap the whirlwind. It hath no stalk, the bud shall yield no meal. If so be it yield, the stranger shall swallow it up. Okay, this is God saying that I'm done playing, and I'm going to start making it obvious to everybody that everything's going downhill quick. So he's diminished the power of Satan, and at the same time he's restrained his blessing from them. That's bad news. So they wake up, and their allegiance to these false gods is no longer a help to them. It has no power behind it anymore. And beyond that, the blessing they had taken for granted, the land producing, God says, I'm not going for that anymore. That was because I was blessing. And if you're not going to recognize me behind it, I'm not going to do it anymore. He said they sowed the wind and they reaped a whirlwind. That's when you plant a field, you sow one little kernel, one little seed, and out pops a plant that has many fruits on it that came from one little tiny little seed. So they blew one little wind, they did something wrong, and it multiplied. Sin reaps bigger sin. Sin doesn't stop. It doesn't go to neutral. You can't plateau. It always moves. Look at it in 2 Kings 18. Second Kings 18:18. And when they had called to the king, there came out to them Eliakim, the son of Hilkiah, which was over the house, and Shebna the scribe, and Joah the son of Asaph the recorder, and Rabshakeh, what a name, said unto them, Speak ye now to Hezekiah, Thus saith the great king, the king of Assyria, What confidence is there wherein thou trustest? Well, that was a good question, because they hadn't been wholeheartedly trusting in God. And he says, I've been going around just devastating this country. Who is it you think you can trust? Because I've just captured them all. And he had a point. Thou sayest, but they are vain words, I have counsel and strength for war. Now on whom dost thou trust that thou rebellest against me? Now behold, thou trustest upon the staff of this bruised reed, even upon, here's what they were trusting, Egypt, on which if a man lean, it will go into his hand and pierce it. He said, do your history homework. Egypt has never been a consistent friend to anybody. They're there to get an upper hand. If they've got to stab you in the back, eventually that's what they're going to do. And pierce it. So is Pharaoh king of Egypt unto all that trust on him. Now he didn't lie about that. He said, you're trusting in somebody who's a backstabber. Really? You're going to rebel against me who's just been mopping, the seaboard up? And you think that this guy who's a backstabber is going to be your help? Now I'm going to take him out, and he'll probably stab you in the back in the process. Ugh, that's what was going on. Look at Job 4. Job 4 verse 8. Job 4 verse 8. This is a principle. God can overcome this principle. But it doesn't mean he always will. Even as I have seen, they that plow iniquity and sow wickedness reap the same. That is, it's just a law. If you plant it, it's going to come up. So, God in our age wipes away our sin, and he'll come in and he'll do some miraculous things. However, there's no guarantee that the flesh will get out from paying any debts that you've put on its bill, because it may have to pay the debt. The flesh is not sanctified, it's not saved. Now we're supposed to use it to glorify God. However, that flesh has got to be remade to be acceptable to God. Proverbs 22. Proverbs 22. Here's the process. Proverbs 22:8. He that soweth iniquity. Okay, iniquity, I probably should explain that. Iniquity is doing a sin so that other people can see it and learn to duplicate that sin. It's iniquity. It has a much harsher punishment in the Bible. There's 3 words you need to study: transgression, sin, and iniquity. They all have 3 different definitions, and they have 3 different thresholds of punishment. He says here, he that soweth iniquity shall reap vanity. Okay, I think that America is there. Our vanity ship has come in. We are proud people. Now, I know that the whole world as a whole is, man has a problem with pride. However, America, because we've gotten all these inventions and we've gotten all of this and that, and, we think that we're somebody. I wouldn't want to live anywhere else. I'm not trying to down America. I'm just saying that Americans, as they've moved away from God and felt like they've become independent, they've gotten vain. And in the process, they've been promoting iniquity. Same-sex marriage, abortion, you name it, wholesale, big time. Kick God out of the schools. I mean, those biggies. And in the process, he says what you're going to reap is vanity. You're going to get a bigger and bigger head. And you know what happens when you get a bigger and bigger head? Eventually it pops. Look at the housing market. It goes for a little while and then it pops. Just like the stock market's about to do. Ecclesiastes 5. Ecclesiastes 5, verse 16. And this also is a sore evil, that in all points as he came, so shall he go. And what profit hath he that hath labored for the wind? Now, laboring for something that you can't put your hands on. You can't capture the wind. How are you going to put that in your bank? Now, a wind is nice to have if you're out on mowing the yard. You want a nice cool breeze to come through, or just a breeze period. Those are nice at certain times. However, there's no way to bank that. It's going to show up when it shows up, and when it's gone, it's gone. There's no way you can capture it. Look at Isaiah 5. Isaiah 5. Wow. Isaiah 5. We might can finish this point. Isaiah 5:28. We didn't quite make it to all our verses. Isaiah 5, verse 28. Whose arrows are sharp, and their bows bent. Their horses' hoofs shall be counted like flint, their wheels like whirlwind. Their roaring shall be like a lion. They shall roar like young lions. Yea, they shall roar and lay hold of the prey, and shall carry it away safe, and none shall deliver it. In that day they shall roar against them like the roaring of the sea. And if one look unto the land, behold, darkness and sorrow, and the light is darkened, and the heavens thereof. Now that's a fact. Now that's a description of what's going to go on in the tribulation. The sun's going to be turned to blood. He's going to darken the sky. All of that stuff, it happened at the crucifixion. The sun didn't come out. It refused to shine. Said, you're going to treat Jesus like that? I'm not coming out to play. And as a nation, they're going to go through that mess. And he says it's not just a matter of the heavens turning their lights out. You'll get some candles out. It's going to be a supernatural darkness. It's like this. The earth is dark, but so is the inhabitants. Depression. It's a pandemic of depression. That's what we're headed for. When you turn from God, in his presence is fullness of joy. You turn from him, you turn to depression. It's a natural result. Galatians 6, verse 7. Galatians 6, verse 7. It'd been nice if the Israelites had the book of Galatians and could have read this, but they had plenty of things at their disposal, and they didn't do anything with those either. He says, be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever man soweth, that shall he also reap. For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. But he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting. He says, Israel, they sowed to the wind. They did things, they served idols, carnality, something they had imposed. They imposed their own wishes on some stick and said, the stick told me to do it. No, their mind told them to do it, or the devil did one. He says it's going to end up in corruption. It's going to go downhill quick. I say this, a Christian is the only one who gets evolution. The lost world is doomed to entropy. For a Christian, things will get better and better. Our end is great. For a lost man, it's not. It's going downhill quick. Isaiah 40 verse 24. And we're almost done. Isaiah 40 verse 24. Yea, they shall not be planted. Yea, they shall not be sown. Yea, their stock shall not take root in the earth. And he shall also blow upon them, and they shall wither. And the whirlwind shall take them away as stubble. God uses this whirlwind thing all the way through there. He uses the whirlwind to correct man. He uses it as a punishment. He says he has his way in the whirlwind. That is, it's a supernatural, like when you're a kid, you'd hear thunder and they'd say that's the voice of God talking, or whatever it is. Okay, maybe not. But the whirlwind, God does use the whirlwind because he said he does. And so when devastation happens, when they call them natural, it's not natural. It's God ordained or God controlled. So when the tornado comes through, when the whirlwind happens, God's saying something to somebody. He's working in that thing. Nothing happens outside of his purview. Look at Jeremiah 23. Jeremiah 23:19. This is not figurative. So many people try to make things figurative in the Bible, and they lose the power of God when they do that. Most of the time, God's showing a man how powerful he is, and if he tries to make it something figurative, he's saying God's not that powerful. But he is. Jeremiah 23:19. Behold, that is, open your eyes. A whirlwind of the Lord is gone forth in fury, even a grievous whirlwind. It shall fall grievously upon the heads of the wicked. God uses what we think of as natural disasters. No, that's God mad. Now, I'm not saying that every house that gets hit by a hurricane is because God's mad at the house. However, God can do that. And he's shown throughout history he's doing it. He says these people in Hosea had sown to the wind, frivolous, empty stuff. And what they're going to reap is God mad. And he's going to come back as a destroying whirlwind.